All right. Well, thank you guys for attending today. We are happy to have you here. That has reminded myself to shut my own chat because I never ever do it. Um, yes, we're going to be talking today about navigating the pandemic abroad. This is our second one we've actually done. We did one at the very beginning of fall term, way long ago now. And now we are doing this one as the final one for this term. And hopefully kind of give you a gauge on the experience as we move forward when traveling during the pandemic. So I'm your moderator today. I am Callie Rouse. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I will be checking the chat for any questions you have, as well as running our presentation. I will be joined today by my co-host, Ashton.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashton Troxel, and I'm an Intercultural Programs Advisor at CGIS, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Yes, and I don't think I mentioned I am the Health and Safety Assistant at CGIS, which for once is actually relevant to the topic. And we will not be joined by our lovely co-host, Stephen, today, but we will be joined by Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Reuter. I am the Senior Health and Safety Advisor for CGIS. My pronouns are she, her, hers as well. Obviously my role is also relevant here as well, and that's why I am joining you all today as well.
Yeah, so whether you're planning on studying abroad with CGIS or maybe doing some independent travel, this presentation will be relevant to you. I think over the past year, our resiliency and flexibility has definitely been tested, and that definitely can apply to traveling abroad. So be ready for unexpected changes. If things don't go as planned, don't get your hopes up. Hopefully you won't get as disappointed. And definitely want to plan ahead. If things are going to be different than you expected in your host country, having that mental preparedness will definitely help you adjust. And then also plan for backup options. And Callie will talk a little bit about that later, such as, enrolling for classes on campus, or maybe even applying to internships just in case your original plans don't pan out. And then we're also going to talk about how much things have changed. As we know, we're preparing for this presentation and looking at the presentation we did, I think, in September, and how much things have changed. And, one day one country is doing fine and the next it's not. So just be prepared for that. And then above all else, your safety and well-being is important. So I'm going to pass it on to Rachel, who's going to talk about whether we decide if programs get to run or not.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about how both the university as well as CGIS decides whether or not we are going to cancel or run a program. And so before I talk a little bit about how CGIS decides whether we're going to run a program, I wanted to talk about how U of M makes that call first. So as you likely know, first the university makes a decision on whether or not the university feels it's safe for students to travel to a given country. And so the university does that based on a number of different factors, and I won't bore you with all those details, but it looks at, we look at things like the State Department travel warning, CDC. We have a travel partner that we work with, that we look at their ratings. We also look at the number of cases per 100,000 over the last 30 days. And so there's a number of different factors that go into that. And ultimately that pans out into a couple of different lists, either a travel warning list as well as a travel restriction list. And so you can find that list online. It's on the Global Michigan website, but probably the easiest way is to just Google UMich travel warning list. And right now, the majority of the world, unfortunately, is a travel restriction list. Prior to COVID, you would find that most of the world was on neither list, meaning that students could go wherever and it was not an issue. But of course, with COVID coming into the mix, that makes things a lot more complicated. So right now, like I was saying, most of the world is a travel restriction list. And what that means is that undergraduates are prohibited from traveling to any country on a travel restriction. There are a few countries, I think we're up to about 20, maybe about 24, that are travel warnings. A travel warning means that undergrads, like most of you or likely all of you, are able to travel to those countries, but there's a lot of additional requirements that go along with it. There's some additional paperwork that has to be done, both on your end as well as on our end. But the good news is that students can travel there. So right now there's, an example of some of those countries would be like South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, places like that. So first, for CGIS to even consider moving forward with a program, obviously the country where the program exists has to be a travel warning, or else there's no point in us even moving forward with it, because we're not going to be able to run a program where a travel restriction, where a country is currently a travel restriction. Then after that, what the way CGIS is looking at it is we're asking partners and providers and universities that we work with overseas to tell us, when are students required to make their first non-refundable financial commitment. And this might be a little bit complicated to understand, but I want to give students the background so that you understand, why we're making decisions when we are. And so basically, if London School of Economics tells us, okay, the students have to pay us by July 1st, and that fee is non-refundable, then we're going to look at all the paperwork that is due, and we're going to say, okay, we need to make a decision by X number of days before July 1st in order to make sure that everything is done so that students can make that payment by July 1st, and we'll know that they can go forward and we don't have to worry about students not getting a refund. So what we want to make sure occurs is that you don't end up paying a fee that you're not going to get your money back for. If we're worried at all that a program is not going to move forward, and you might not, we're worried at all that a program is going to not move forward, and you might have to pay a fee that is non-refundable, then we're just not going to move forward at all, and we're going to cancel it before you pay that fee so that you don't lose any money. So I hope that made sense. Basically, the short version of it is that CGIS is ultimately making decisions on a program by program basis based on financial commitment dates, and looking at travel warning and travel restriction program dates, and trying to decide, where is it most feasible for us to send students, and how can we best support our students once they're on the ground. So with that, if you're applying to a program in the fall or the academic year, or even next winter, we encourage you to do so. We have a lot of programs available, and there are a lot of different options out there. And I certainly am optimistic as we move forward and vaccines become more available. But we just encourage you to have alternative plans available, because certainly not all of these programs are going to run. And so, you will want to register for classes still here on campus. You'll want to look into housing and things like that, to just in the off chance, or in the chance that your study abroad is no longer an option, you want to make sure that you have an option here on campus as well.
Great. So I am going to talk a little bit about on-site program changes. So what to actually expect as of right now, on what your experience could be like during the pandemic. So first off, with flow of travel. So travel between countries is going to be difficult and require quarantines most often. And so it may look extremely different from, maybe past years you've traveled, or how your friends have traveled before, going from country to country, you should expect spending a lot more time in your host city and staying local throughout your experience abroad. And one of the kind of cool, unique things students who have been abroad have noticed is that like there aren't a lot of tourists around. And so, and if you spend a lot of time staying in your local city, that you kind of engage more with the local culture than maybe your past peers have been able to. Visa restrictions, noting that there may be restrictions on whether you can even enter the country and or other countries around it. The US has been restricted from a lot of different places because we haven't really handled COVID very well. And so that's something to note and something also to look into if you are not a US citizen about whether you will be able to attend certain programs if your country, citizens from your country are not able to enter. Friends and family visiting is pretty common in the past, but it is not pretty likely this term because of the quarantines you're likely to face. So, you know, planning to build in like a 14-day quarantine is really hard if you know how to plan for your family to come visit for a week or something like that. If you were to kind of engage in that kind of joint traveling with family or friends, that may happen more after the program. Oh, and I wanted to note up above with the travel between countries, not only is it difficult, but also our program providers or universities may prohibit you from traveling during the program to other countries just for the safety of the local population. And also note that excursions are maybe canceled or altered. So like I said, you're going to be spending a lot of time in your host city. And things that once were like, you know, you traveling across country to do it or into a different country, you may be doing in a kind of virtual sense, or you may be kind of like finding a more local variant on that activity. And then also housing in homestays is unlikely because of the health risks associated with it. There are maybe some that may open back up as things get a little bit better, but right now it's been definitely tending toward staying in a single occupancy like dorm room and things like that. Other changes, so quarantines and new laws. So like I mentioned, quarantines are a reality of right now. These are typically like 10 to 14 days. They do vary based on different countries, what they require, but it is something you may have to anticipate. If you're on a CGIS program, we will build those into all your plans. But it is notable that like that's something you would have to pay out of pocket. And being vaccinated is not currently an exception for going through the quarantine period. Again, constantly changing situation. We have no idea how this might change when fall comes. That's why we emphasize flexibility. Contact tracing. So contact tracing is something that may be a little bit more invasive in your life than you are used to here in the US. So for example, our students that are planning on going to South Korea this coming summer are going to be like having to download an app, and like if they go to like high volume of people that enter a place like a restaurant or something like that, they have to like enter information about themselves to make sure that there is contact tracing in case there is any kind of outbreak in that area. In addition, there is also new laws in place. So fines, jail time, expulsion from the country can occur and have occurred for people who have violated quarantines, violated mask mandates, restrictions on like nightly restrictions on like how late you can be out and things like that. So you want to make sure you know what is expected of you in the local country and know that you are restricted into those behaviors and that you are to comply with local law. Healthcare. So vaccinations are highly recommended to get prior to departure. They often won't be providing any vaccinations to foreigners in a foreign country. So you want to make sure that you're probably getting your vaccine prior to departure if at all possible. And that also, as things like vaccine passports become more prevalent, it's probably going to make your travel experience easier as well. COVID treatment. So wonderful health insurance that we do have. It actually will cover you if you get COVID. It also will cover if you have symptomatic testing you have to do or have government mandated COVID testing that you are required to do. On the flip side, precautionary COVID tests are not covered. But if you do actually have COVID, you will be covered by the insurance. Sorry, that's the dog. What if we go virtual after arrival? So you get there, you're all excited, and then there is an outbreak in your area. This is a reality, especially as we see kind of patchy, distributions of the vaccine. The US has tons and tons of vaccines, and other places don't have nearly as many. And so, we may be seeing less and less of that right now, but it will still be a reality to face as we go forward. And so the likelihood is that the students will probably stay in country. It won't look like the expulsion or the rapid leaving the country that we saw in March 2020. And you'll likely stay in country to complete some kind of virtual programming until or if in-person classes resume. And those are all kind of planned out by us. We talk with our providers about what kind of things to anticipate. And so this is something we're thinking about as well as wanting you guys to think about as well. Right, Ashton.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about returning to the US since about January 26th of 2021, the US is now requiring negative PCR tests to be able to get on your flight. That's has to be taken within 3 days of your flight leaving. We've built that into all the program budget sheets so you know how much it costs in your particular country. So make sure you're budgeting accordingly. And then if, like Callie had mentioned, if you do test positive, you may have to quarantine in that country for a certain number of days before you'll be able to leave. And then for non-US citizens, I mean, how things change rapidly. We have a little bit more stable government now, so hopefully this won't happen to any of our international students, but make sure you're keeping up to date with that information and discuss any international travel with your immigration advisor.
If you have no questions, I just wanted to mention that this is our last CGIS brief of the term, and we are hopefully considering having a second year of the CGIS brief. It has been a really wonderful way for us to connect with students while we have been in this weird remote place. And as we kind of move into a hybrid setting in the fall, we may be continuing this in a virtual or potentially gathered format. All right. Well, thank you guys for attending today and have a wonderful Thursday. Bye.